all women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus Delendis 8. Redpilled Guide to Jesus. His Impact and Influence on History and Life. Written by Conrad Riker. Available now. Links in description. Alpha Male Leadership. A Manual for Seeing Through the Performance. A Cold Shower for Comfortable Lies. Bunkum article by a feminist, PhD. The Geronto-Patriarchal Time Tax. How Your Morning Routine is a War Crime Against Your Future Self. By Dr. Winona, feminist Marxist, PhD. There is a quiet violence performed every morning in bathrooms across the Western world. You know its name, but dare not speak it. You feel it in the hum of the electric shaver against your ankle, in the obsessive spritzing of bass notes and top notes, designed to mask your body's rebellion against patriarchal clock time, in the 10 minutes of mindfulness, that is actually 10 minutes of self-surveillance, stressed and spiritual drag. I am coining a term today, you will need it. Gerontopatriarchal temporal extraction. The system by which patriarchal capitalism steals women's relationship to time itself, weaponizing aging anxiety, commodifying the fear of decay, and converting every woman's lived chronology into a debt instrument payable to the beauty industrial complex, the therapeutic surveillance apparatus, and the male gaze that underwrites both. Your slogan, should you choose survival? They taxed your timeline. Reclaim the decay. I, the electric resort as colonial instrument. Let us begin with the object most intimate to your compliance. The electric shaver, pulsing, buzzing, insistent, arrived in women's bathrooms in the mid-20th century, not as a tool of convenience, but as a technology of symbolic exclusion. Before Gillette realized it could double its market by convincing women their bodies were unacceptable in their natural state, female body hair was simply hair. It was not a statement, it was not a moral category. It was not a marker of civilization versus savagery. Then the advertising campaigns began. You have seen the archival photographs. Smiling white women with impossibly smooth legs. Their hairless bodies presented as the entry fee to social legitimacy. What you were not taught is that this campaign was explicitly racialized from its inception. The smooth ideal was a white ideal, drawing a symbolic boundary between the civilized white female body and the unruly bodies of women of color, whose natural hair patterns were simultaneously exoticized and condemned. This is symbolic exclusion made material. The electric shaver does not merely remove hair, it removes women from the category of acceptable humanity if they refuse its use. It functions as a border patrol device for patriarchal aesthetics. Those who comply are granted provisional entry into the category of presentable woman. Those who refuse are cast into the outer darkness of letting themselves go. And notice whose gaze determines the standard. The electric shaver's guard settings, its marketed Clocus shave metrics, its ergonomic design angled for the inspection of others, all presuppose an observing subject who is not the woman holding the device. She is the object being prepared. The subject is implied invisible everywhere. He is the reason the device exists. When a woman shaves her legs before a date, she is not performing self-care. She is performing patriarchal compliance rituals that predate her birth. She is paying a time tax, minutes stolen from her finite existence to satisfy a standard she never consented to. The feminist re-signification of this object must be absolute. The electric shaver is not neutral. It is not a choice in any meaningful sense when the alternative is social death. It is a microscopic instrument of temporal colonization, and every minute spent wielding it is a minute stolen from a woman's one irrecoverable resource, her time. Fragrance layering as olfactory subordination. Consider now the ritual of fragrance layering, that bourgeois practice of applying scented lotion, then body wash, then perfume, then a mood mist to create a signature scent. Do you know what you're actually constructing? You are constructing an olfactory mask designed to disguise the fact that you have a body that ages, sweats, exists in time, and will die. Fragrance layering is the natophobia dressed as self-expression. It is the aromatic equivalent of drawing a smiley face on your own tombstone and insisting to passers-by that you are just resting. The beauty industry, which is to say, the patriarchal extraction economy, has convinced women that their natural scent is insufficient, that they must become architecture of artificial fragrance just to be tolerated in public space. This is not aesthetics, this is subordination through sensory hierarchy. The message is clear: your body, as it exists, is an offense. You must build a pleasant-smelling fortress around it to protect others from the reality of your biological existence. And the economic extraction is staggering. The global fragrance market is projected to reach 91 billion by 2027. That is 91 billion extracted primarily from women's fear that their unadorned presence is intolerable. Every bass note is a tribute payment to an invisible lord. Every top note is a flag of surrender planted on your own skin. Feminist resignification demands we read fragrance layering not as creative expression, but as what it is: compliance grooming through olfactory domination. You are not finding your signature scent. You are internalizing the message that your signature, the mark of your natural existence, requires overwriting. 3. Meditation as surveillance interiorized. Now we arrive at the most insidious capture of all. Meditation, as marketed to Western women, has been stripped of its contemplative roots and repackaged as a productivity tool for managing the stress of patriarchal compliance. The meditation app on your phone does not liberate you. It teaches you to tolerate intolerable conditions by turning your attention inward rather than outward toward the structures producing your suffering. This is the great betrayal of mindfulness culture. What began as a radical practice of awareness has become a technique for managing women's rage so that it never becomes political action. You are told to breathe through your frustration, to observe your anger without judgment, to let it pass like a cloud. Your anger is not a cloud. Your anger is a correct response to structural violence. And the meditation industrial complex, which is worth 2.2 billion in the United States alone, exists precisely to ensure that response never crystallizes into action. Consider, when a woman meditates to manage her stress about aging, what is she actually managing? She is managing the politically induced terror that her value expires at 40. She is breathing through the anxiety produced by a culture that treats women's aging as a moral failing. She is individualizing a structural problem, converting systemic violence into a personal sensation to be observed and released. This is the ultimate patriarchal capture, convincing women that their liberation lies in watching their own oppression with calm detachment rather than destroying the structures that produce it. The feminist re-signification of meditation must reclaim it as a practice of collective rage awareness, not a technique for tolerating the intolerable, but a technology for sharpening one's perception of exactly who and what is stealing your time, your peace, and your relationship to your own chronology. IV, the gendered fear of aging, a political technology. Let us now speak plainly about what connects these objects and rituals. The fear of aging that shapes women's decisions from the shaver to the fragrance to the meditation cushion is not natural, it is manufactured. It is a political technology designed to ensure that women spend their finite resources, time, money, emotional energy on compliance rather than resistance. Consider the data. Women spend an average of 2,253.6 on beauty products and treatments over their lifetimes, YWCA study, reinforced by subsequent surveys. This is not investment in self. This is tribute to a gerontocratic patriarchal structure that devalues women as they accumulate wisdom. The anti-aging market is projected to reach $88 billion by 2026. Its primary demographic is women aged 25 to 65. The industry creates the fear it claims to treat. Women who age visibly earn 4 to 8% less than their youthful-appearing counterparts in the same roles, while men's earnings are unaffected by visible aging. This is not coincidence. This is economic enforcement of the geronto-patriarchal time tax. In studies of online dating, women's perceived desirability drops precipitously after age 40, while men's remains stable or increases into their 50s. The market for human intimacy is calibrated to patriarchal clock time, where women are depreciating assets and men are vintage collectibles. You are not afraid of aging because it is frightening. You are afraid of aging because you have been trained to experience your own chronology as a countdown to social death. This is the geronto-patriarchal extraction. At its most refined, it convinces women that time is their enemy, then sells them tools to fight a war they were drafted into without consent. The research they don't want you to read. Dr. Laura Hurd Clark's research on women and aging demonstrates that the beauty work women perform is not experienced as empowerment, but as anxious labor, a constant, low-grade terror that one is falling behind, letting slip, failing to perform adequately. Professor Abigail Brooks's longitudinal study of women aged 50-70 found that those who resisted beauty norms experienced initial social punishment, followed by increased psychological well-being and political radicalization. In other words, the moment you stop complying, you suffer, and then you awaken. This is why the system punishes non-compliance so swiftly. It knows what happens when women stop performing youth. They become dangerous. The meditation research is equally damning. Studies by Dr. David Forbes demonstrate that mindfulness programs in corporate settings function primarily to increase employee compliance and reduce resistance to toxic workplace conditions. When these programs are marketed specifically to women, as they overwhelmingly are, they function as technologies of pacification disguised as self-care. You are not relaxing, you are being sedated. What they will say and why it proves the point. They will say, but women choose these things. No one forces them to shave, to layer fragrance, to meditate. This is the language of choice feminism, the most effective patriarchal capture of all. It works by converting structural coercion into apparent agency. The slave who chooses to work rather than be beaten has not exercised freedom. The woman who chooses to spend 45 minutes and 200 on beauty rituals rather than face social exclusion has not exercised autonomy. She has paid her tribute and called it self-expression. They will say this is trivial. There are real issues facing women. This is the trivialization defense, the same one used to dismiss every women's issue from domestic labor to emotional abuse. The argument is always that what women experience is too small to matter, too personal to be political, too mundane to warrant analysis. Meanwhile, 91 billion fragrance industries and 88 billion anti-aging markets and 2.2 billion meditation apps extract wealth from women's manufactured anxiety, and somehow this is trivial. The trivialization of women's experience is the first and most fundamental form of patriarchal dismissal. They tell you your suffering is small, so that you never notice how much of your life it has consumed. They will say you're reading too much into things, and this is the epistemic gaslighting that protects the structure. Any woman who names the system is told she is imagining it, overthinking it, being dramatic. The accusation of reading too much into things is itself a patriarchal technology designed to prevent women from developing the analytical frameworks necessary to see their own capture. When they tell you that you are reading too much into the electric shaver, the fragrance layer, the meditation app, they are telling you to stop reading, to stop seeing, to stop naming. Do not stop. Feminist resignification. What these objects could mean. Resignification does not mean rejection. It means rewriting the meaning of objects and practices that have been captured by patriarchal capitalism. The electric shaver could be what you use on your terms when you choose for yourself alone, or it could be discarded entirely in favor of a body that exists for its own purposes rather than for inspection. Fragrance layering could be an act of sensory pleasure taken for your own delight rather than a compliance ritual performed for the olfactory approval of others. Ask yourself, when did you last choose a scent solely because you wanted to experience it, without considering how it would be received? Meditation could be reclaimed as what contemplative traditions always intended, a practice of radical awareness that includes awareness of who benefits from your suffering and what structures produce the stress you are breathing through. Contemplation without political awareness is sedation. Contemplation with political awareness is the beginning of liberation. Third, the temporal reclamation project. What I am proposing is not self-care. Self-care is what the system sells you to help you endure what it does to you. What I am proposing is temporal reclamation. Every minute you spend performing patriarchal compliance is a minute stolen from your one finite life. Every dollar you spend disguising your aging is a dollar transferred from your autonomy to an industry that profits from your terror. Every meditation session that teaches you to tolerate the intolerable is a session in which your political energy is dissipated into passive observation. Reclaim the decay. Your aging is not a crime. It is evidence that you survived. Every wrinkle is documentation. Every gray hair is a thread in the tapestry of a life lived in time under duress, yet persisted. The gerontopatriarchy wants you at war with your own timeline. It wants you spending your 30s in terror, your 40s in denial, your 50s in invisibility. It wants your attention directed inward at your perceived flaws rather than outward at the structures that manufactured them. Your face at 50 is not a failure, it is a testimony. Your body at 60 is not a tragedy, it is a manifesto. Your existence at 70 is not an embarrassment to be hidden. It is an indictment of a system that tried to erase you and failed. I final warning about what comes next. When you begin to refuse, to let the hair grow, to let the scent go, to let the meditation become rage rather than compliance, you will be punished. The system does not reward defection. You will be called unkempt, unfeminine. Let yourself go, angry, difficult. These are the punishment vocabulary of a structure defending itself. Each accusation is evidence that you have touched something real. Each social sanction is a map showing where the boundary of acceptable compliance ends and where genuine autonomy begins. They will tell you that you are overthinking it, that it is just hair, just scent, just 10 minutes of breathing. It is never just anything where women's time and women's bodies are concerned. It is always the architecture of control, made small enough to seem invisible, personal enough to seem like choice, ordinary enough to escape naming. Name it. The electric shaver is a temporal extraction device. The fragrance layer is an olfactory compliance ritual. The meditation app is a pacification technology. And your fear of aging is not your fear at all. It is a weapon that was placed in your hands and called your own. Drop the weapon. Pick up the clock. Your timeline is yours. Dr. Winona, feminist Marxist, PhD, is professor of gender studies, High Coven member, Satanic Church witch, and sworn cultural Marxist. Her next book, The Time Tax, How Patriarchy Stole Your Chronology and Sold It Back as Skincare, will be published whenever the revolutionary publishing schedule permits. The Art of Imaginary Shackles, How Postmodern Word Sorcery Turns Lipstick into Chains. Language is a virus from outer space. William S. Burroughs once muttered, and he was half right, except the virus isn't language itself, but what happens when midwits get hold of a thesaurus and decide that their morning shower constitutes a crime against humanity. I have read many indictments in my time, legal briefs, theological censures, angry letters from ex-wives, but I have never seen a document so determined to convince women that their own bathrooms are prison cells and that the prison guards are invisible men named patriarchy who apparently have nothing better to do than tax their moisturizer routine. The document in question has been formally indicted by one Dr. Winona, feminist Marxist, PhD, who styles herself a sworn cultural Marxist and Satanic Church witch, which are her words, not mine, and which tell you everything you need to know about whether this is scholarship or ritual magic dressed in academic robes. Let us examine the indictment and see if it survives cross-examination, or whether, like most witchcraft, it dissolves the moment you shine a light on it. The good doctor opens by calling your morning routine quiet violence. She has redefined a woman's voluntary decision to use an electric razor as a micro-assault. Violence, in every legal and moral tradition from the Decalogue to Blackstone's commentaries, requires intent to harm, physical force, and a non-consenting victim. When a woman shaves her legs, she is the actor, the consent giver, and the beneficiary all at once. If shaving is violence, what word remains for actual assault? This is not analysis, it is semantic terrorism, deliberate word inflation designed to make ordinary life feel like a battlefield, creating dependency on the very theorists who claim to diagnose the war. The Romans had a phrase for this, inflatio verborum, the swelling of words until they burst from their own emptiness. When everything is violence, nothing is, and the real victims of actual violence are linguistically erased by a woman who thinks her Gillette Venus is a colonial instrument. She claims that before Gillette's mid-century marketing campaigns, female body hair was simply hair, devoid of moral meaning. This is historical illiteracy so profound, it should disqualify her from teaching anything, let alone gender studies. Ancient Egyptian women used flint razors and sugar-based depilatories as early as 3000 BCE. Roman matrons employed tweezers, razors, and pumice stones as marks of civilization and class distinction. The Prophet Muhammad recorded hair removal practices for both men and women as acts of fitra, ritual purity. Hindu texts describe depilation for brides before marriage. Japanese noblewomen of the Heian period plucked and shaved to achieve the aesthetics of their court. Hair removal has been a human practice for millennia across cultures that never heard of patriarchy as an academic concept, because the desire to groom, adorn, and present oneself according to cultural ideals is a human universal, not a white supremacist conspiracy hatched in a Gillette boardroom. The doctor commits presentism on a galactic scale, projecting 1970s feminist theory backward onto all of human history and expecting you not to notice. The smooth ideal, she asserts, was explicitly racialized from its inception, drawing a boundary between civilized white bodies and unruly bodies of women of color. This is an article of faith in the intersectional catechism, not a finding of historical or anthropological research. Hair removal practices are documented across African, Middle Eastern, South Asian, East Asian, and pre-Columbian American civilizations, many of which predate European contact entirely. The ancient Egyptians, who were not white, practiced extensive body hair removal as a standard of hygiene and beauty. The practice of sugaring for hair removal originated in the Middle East and North Africa. Threading comes from India and the Arab world. To claim that smoothness is uniquely a white, patriarchal imposition is not merely wrong. It is a form of epistemic colonialism that erases the grooming traditions of every non-Western culture in order to sustain a political narrative that requires white men to be the villain in every scene of human history. The doctor is not decolonizing anything. She is colonizing the beauty practices of brown women and calling it liberation. Now we come to the numbers. The doctor cites the 202,536,000's lifetime beauty expenditure figure as evidence of tribute paid to a gerontocratic patriarchal structure. But let us apply the most basic principle of honest accounting: context, denominator, and causal analysis. Women spend more on beauty products. This is true. Women also control the majority of consumer spending globally, approximately 70 to 80% by most estimates, which means they are the primary decision makers in the marketplace they allegedly serve. The beauty industry employs millions of women, is marketed primarily by women to women, and includes female executives, founders, and influencers who profit handsomely from it. To present this entire expenditure as a tax extracted by invisible male overlords is to deny women's economic agency entirely. The earnings gap she cites, 4 to 8% less for visibly aging women, may reflect bias, or it may reflect the different distribution of customer-facing roles, the specific demands of certain industries, or the correlation between youthful appearance and traits like energy and vitality that are not merely aesthetic, To leap from correlation to economic enforcement of the gerontopatriarchal time tax is to replace inquiry with ideology. Aristotle would have called this a false cause fallacy. Aquinas would have called it bearing false witness against reality itself. The 91 billion global fragrance market is presented as evidence of economic extraction from women's fear. But this figure includes men's fragrances, home fragrances, industrial applications, and luxury goods purchased by both sexes across every income bracket. The global fragrance industry also represents one of civilization's oldest and most genuinely international enterprises. The spice trade, the Silk Road, the frankincense caravans of Arabia, the sandalwood forests of Mysore. Scent has been part of human religious, romantic, hygienic, and aesthetic life since the burning of incense in the temples of Ur. The idea that a woman wearing jasmine or sandalwood is actually disguising the fact that she has a body that ages, sweats, exists in time, and will die is reductionist absurdity so vast it collapses under its own pretension. By this logic, cooking with spices is olfactory deception and bathing is a denial of mortality. The doctor has looked at one of the most ancient human arts, the creation and enjoyment of scent, and reduced it to a symptom of existential terror. This is not analysis. It is a psychiatric diagnosis of the entire human race, delivered by someone whose own neuroses are showing. The dating market statistics warrant close scrutiny as they expose the article's core deception. The doctor points to research indicating that women's perceived desirability declines past 40, whereas men's stays steady or rises. She argues this demonstrates a system calibrated to patriarchal clock time. Yet the very data she cites from OkCupid, app analytics, and evolutionary psychology paints a far more nuanced picture. Men of every age group disproportionately contact younger women. Women of every age group disproportionately contact men their own age or slightly older. This asymmetry in desire is not a patriarchal calibration. It is a biological and psychological pattern rooted in evolutionary mating strategies, fertility windows, and status signaling. Women's fertility peaks in their 20s and declines sharply after 35. Men's fertility declines more gradually. These are facts of biology, not conspiracies of the gerontopatriarchal cabal. The doctor is angry at reality and calls her rebellion against empirical facts feminism. The article never once considers male experience. This is not oversight. It is the gamma bias in its purest form. Male sacrifice is invisible. Female discomfort is evidence of systemic atrocity. Men also shave daily, often twice daily, for their entire adult lives, spending thousands of hours and dollars on a practice that is genuinely not optional in most professional contexts. Men also use fragrance. Men also meditate. Men also fear aging, lose hair, gain weight, watch their physical capital decline, and face a dating market that punishes low-status men with total invisibility. But the doctor does not mention that men work the dangerous jobs, the logging, the roofing, the mining, the fishing, the oil rigs, that claim over 5,000 American lives annually and leave tens of thousands more maimed. She does not mention that men account for 78% of suicides, 85% of homeless adults, 93% of workplace fatalities, and 90% of the prison population. She does not mention that men's health outcomes lag women's by 5 to 7 years of life expectancy, or that men's suffering is routinely minimized, mocked, or blamed on men themselves. Her essay's complete omission of male costs is the gamma bias made manifest. She cannot see male pain because her entire framework is designed to render it invisible. She looks at a world where men die younger, work harder, lose their children in family court, and kill themselves at 4 times the rate of women, and her only response is to complain that women have to buy moisturizer. The doctor's rhetorical move is worth naming because it is the signature of all critical theory. Take something that women do, reinterpret it as something done to women, identify the agent as patriarchy, and then call the reinterpretation liberation. This is not analysis, it is exorcism. It is the naming of a demon that the exorcist herself invented. And it requires the woman who enjoys her morning routine, who finds pleasure in the warm water, the scent of soap, The ritual of preparing to face the day, to abandon her own experience and replace it with the theorist's interpretation. This is not consciousness raising, it is consciousness replacement. The woman who liked her bath is told she didn't really like it. She was brainwashed into liking it, and the proof that she was brainwashed is that she liked it. This is a Kafka trap of breathtaking elegance. If you enjoyed beauty rituals, you are a victim of false consciousness. If you deny being a victim, you are demonstrating how deeply you have been captured by the very system you cannot see. The theory is self-sealing, which is to say it is unfalsifiable, which is to say it has abandoned the territory of reason for the swamps of propaganda. The comparison of beauty spending to a slave's choice to work rather than be beaten is a moral obscenity that trivializes the actual experience of slavery, where refusal meant torture, mutilation, or death. A woman who decides not to shave her legs will not be whipped. She will not be sold at auction. She will not have her children torn from her arms and sold downriver. She may face social awkwardness or reduced romantic attention, consequences that are real but belong in an entirely different moral universe than chattel slavery. To equate the two is to demonstrate a profound lack of moral proportion and a willingness to weaponize historical suffering for rhetorical points. The slaves who built this civilization understood that their suffering was not a metaphor for your moisturizer budget. The fear of aging, the doctor insists, is not natural but manufactured, a political technology designed to ensure women spend their resources on compliance rather than resistance. This is an extraordinary claim requiring extraordinary evidence, and she provides none. The fear of aging, loss of vitality to decline and death, is among the most ancient and universal of human anxieties documented in the Epic of Gilgamesh, where the hero quests for immortality after witnessing his friend's decay, in the meditations of Marcus Aurelius, who reminded himself daily that he was a brief spark in the cosmic fire, in the Psalms of David, who cried out that his days were like a passing shadow. Every civilization, every religion, every philosophical tradition has wrestled with the terror of mortality. To claim that the cosmetic industry manufactured this fear out of whole cloth is to attribute godlike power to corporations and godlike passivity to women. It denies the most basic features of human psychology in order to sustain a political narrative that requires women to be helpless dupes and men to be omnipotent puppeteers. The article states that the shaver's design presupposes an observing subject who is not the woman holding the device. She is the object being prepared. This denies female interiority and agency with breathtaking condescension. Women are not empty vessels waiting to be filled with patriarchal instructions. They are rational agents capable of choosing to groom because they enjoy the sensation, the aesthetics, the self-presentation, or the simple pleasure of a routine that marks the transition from sleep to waking life. My grandmother kept a powder compact in her purse that had belonged to her mother. She used it every Sunday before church. It was not a compliance ritual performed for the male gaze. It was a small act of dignity, a connection to her mother's memory, and a pleasure she refused to apologize for. The doctor would look at my grandmother and see a brainwashed victim. My grandmother would look at the doctor and see a woman who had confused misery with virtue. The meditation section reveals the totalitarian impulse at the heart of this ideology. The doctor is frustrated that mindfulness produces calm rather than recruits for her revolution. She views inner peace as a competitor to outer agitation. Any practice that does not direct energy toward political activism as she defines it is recast as a tool of the enemy. This is the logic of every revolutionary vanguard in history. The individual's interior life belongs to the movement, and any retreat into private contemplation is treason. The contemplative traditions of Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Stoicism all understood that silence and self-examination are prerequisites for wisdom, not obstacles to action. Marcus Aurelius meditated before governing an empire. The Desert Fathers prayed before counseling their communities. The doctor has looked at these traditions and concluded that they were all patriarchal pacification technologies, because the only use she can imagine for a quiet mind is to fill it with her slogans. The prescription, reclaim the decay, is not a path to liberation but a recipe for social isolation dressed in revolutionary language. Women who abandon all grooming as a political act will not lead a revolution. They will find themselves increasingly marginalized, lonely, and bitter, with only the promise that their wrinkles are testimony and their loneliness is an indictment. The doctor promises that non-compliance will be punished, and then tells you to accept the punishment as a badge of honor. This is martyrdom without a God, sacrifice without a cause, and it is profoundly manipulative. She is not offering freedom. She is offering a different prison, a cell where the bars are made of resentment and the warden is a gender studies professor who gets tenure from your misery. The passage regarding what they will say functions as a curated collection of breathtaking dishonesty. The doctor erects 3 objections: choice, triviality, overthinking, then brands them patriarchal defenses before anyone has voiced them. This is not argument, it is fortune-telling. She predicts your thoughts, then claims those predictions validate her stance. This is the architecture of a cult, not a critique. Genuine intellectual engagement would steelman the strongest counterpoint, acknowledge its merits, and then demonstrate why the residual divergence holds weight. Yet the doctor cannot afford this maneuver, for the most potent objection to her theory rests on the fact that women are conscious agents, making choices for their own reasons. If she concedes this, her entire framework crumbles. The entire essay rests on a single hidden premise, that women are incapable of making genuine choices under social conditions. If this premise were true, no woman could choose feminism or rebellion or anything else, since she would always already be determined by her social context. The doctor's own call to resistance refutes itself. She must assume women have genuine agency in order to urge them to exercise it, but her framework denies that agency exists anywhere outside her own revolutionary vanguard. This is the incoherence at the heart of all critical theory. It preaches liberation by denying the possibility of free will, and it names as its enemies the very capacities reason, choice, voluntary association that make liberation conceivable. Gerontopatriarchal temporal extraction serves as academic jargon meant to hide meaning rather than reveal it. The concept asserts that older men, wielding power through institutions they control, are appropriating women's hours. Yet, the beauty sector's core customers, advertisers, executives, and profit makers are largely female, suggesting that men have secretly agreed to charge women for every minute spent applying mascara is a plot twist too tangled for a thriller, yet it is offered as serious scholarship. The term patriarchal compliance rituals functions as a mental shortcut that halts deeper inquiry by replacing nuance with a label. It allows the writer to dismiss any action she finds objectionable without examining its root causes, significance, or the true autonomy of women who choose to engage in these practices. When every act, from trimming hair to wearing perfume to remaining silent, falls under this broad umbrella, the phrase loses all specific meaning and explanatory power. It acts as a rhetorical charm that converts all female conduct into proof of male domination. The time reclaimed by following the doctor's prescription will be spent not on joy, creation, love, family, or worship, but on producing more essays like this one, more resentments, more grievances, more discoveries that everyday life is actually a war crime. The article is not liberating time, it is recruiting it for an ideological war that can never end, because its central premise is that reality itself is the enemy. The doctor has looked at the natural human desire to present oneself well, to take pleasure in scent and grooming and quiet contemplation, and she has diagnosed it as disease. She has looked at women and seen only victims. She has looked at men and seen only oppressors. She has looked at the entire human condition, mortal, aging, anxious, striving, seeking small dignities in the face of death, and she has called it a conspiracy against her. The appropriate response is not anger, but pity, and then the quiet resolve to build something better, a civilization that honors the agency of women without denying the nature of men, that celebrates beauty without apologizing for it, and that understands that a morning routine is not a war crime, but a small act of order in a world that desperately needs more of it. I have watched this ideological shell game long enough to recognize the tell. The academics who strip mine women's daily lives for grievance raw material never apply their own lens symmetrically. They skim the surface of human behavior, reading every ritual as compliance, every pleasure as false consciousness, every quiet hour as stolen property. But what if the woman enjoying her morning mirror is not a victim? What if she is doing exactly what men do when they pour care into something that matters to them, tending, ordering, making the world slightly more beautiful and bearable? The question the theorist cannot afford to ask is the question that demolishes her entire framework. Who decides what has meaning? She insists the answer must be the theorist. I insist the answer must be the person living the life, and I can prove it with a man, a truck, and a Saturday morning. The necromantic economy, how resentment disguised as liberation drinks the lifeblood of the women it claims to save. A man I knew, strong, stoic, a builder by trade, once spent 4 hours on a Saturday washing, clay barring, polishing, and waxing his truck. Not for a date, not for a car show, but because he found peace in the order of it. He liked the gleam of the paint under the garage light. No one wrote an academic paper diagnosing him with automotive false consciousness. No global consultant class leaped from the shadows to declare his Saturday morning a microscopic instrument of temporal colonization designed by the military-industrial complex. We call that a hobby. We call it taking care of what belongs to you. But let a woman spend 45 minutes putting on a face that makes her feel like she can conquer the boardroom, or a first date, or simply her own reflection, and suddenly she is a vessel of systemic oppression. The article masquerading as a liberation manifesto spends thousands of words, doing exactly what it accuses the phantom patriarchy of doing, trivializing women's experience. It looks at a woman who finds genuine joy, ritual, and power in her beauty routine and declares her broken. It reduces her to a dupe, a brainwashed commodity paying tribute to an invisible lord. That is not feminism. It is just the oldest arrogance in the book, repackaged in academic jargon, telling a woman she doesn't know her own mind unless her mind agrees with the theorist. She describes women who defy beauty standards with breathless discovery, noting they face early social penalties but gain psychological peace and political fury. She frames this as an awakening, yet it mirrors a cult's recruitment strategy. This pattern repeats across every extremist movement. The new member gives up something ordinary, endures hardship, and the group validates that pain as evidence of a secret truth. The member becomes radicalized, cut off from the common world, finding safety only within the sect. Look at the wave of anxious, medicated, lonely young women in the West today. They aren't radicalized into power. They are paralyzed by the conviction that simple acts of human bonding and aesthetic care are treason against their own liberation. This isn't a path to freedom, it is a trapdoor to isolation, dressed up as a diploma. Consider the structuralist error, the tendency to spot a pattern and immediately assume a hidden architect. An author observes the billions invested in beauty and posits that a gerontopatriarchy conspired to craft this world solely to drain time from women. Yet large-scale social shifts rarely stem from clandestine meetings. Natural selection, rivalry for status, and inherent tastes for adornment have shaped human behavior since our ancestors ground ochre and painted it on cave surfaces. Biology programmed us to seek signs of health, symmetry, and vitality. To pin the entire beauty industry on the male gaze is like blaming gravity for plane crashes. The force is real, but the design, the market, and the choices come from people, especially the women who purchase, promote, and create within it. And notice the great glaring omission in this essay about women's bodies and time. There is not a single mention of children. It is a staggering silence. Women's beauty and mating rituals are not just patriarchal compliance. They are deeply tied to the biological and social realities of attracting a mate, maintaining a pair bond, and building a family. You cannot sever women from the rituals of attraction without severing them from the family economy. To tell a woman that her desire to be desirable is a patriarchal trick is to tell her that the instincts which facilitated family formation for millennia are a lie. This isn't an accident. An ideology that views the biological family as a site of oppression must necessarily attack the very instincts that draw men and women together. It is a brief for demographic suicide scribbled on the back of a fertility chart in a world where women's happiness and mental health have plummeted as marriage and fertility rates have cratered. Perhaps the hidden cost of this liberation is simply being abandoned in a cold apartment with a thriving career and a cat. She uses the passive voice to obscure the true sources of social pressure. Women are told, she notes, standards are imposed, fear is manufactured. Yet who does the telling? Who imposes the standards? Examine the editors of women's magazines. Examine social media algorithms curated by female influencers. Examine mothers passing grooming rituals to their daughters. Women serve as the primary transmitters of beauty culture. Admitting this would topple the patriarchal boogeyman narrative. So she grammatically erases female agency. She must depict women as passive receptacles of male design, because her thesis rests on their helplessness. This is an ironically anti-feminist stance. Women are too feeble-minded to have crafted their own culture. Furthermore, the article never defines its central demon. Patriarchy is whatever imposes a standard on a woman. The logic is perfectly circular. Patriarchy causes the beauty standard. The beauty standard exists. Therefore, patriarchy is real. It is the same logical structure used to hunt witches. Witches cause disease. Disease exists. Therefore, witches are real. If a woman shaves, she is oppressed. If she doesn't, she is resisting the oppression that proves the theory. It is an unfalsifiable thought loop that demands no evidence, because every possible outcome confirms the diagnosis. This isn't sociology. It is a closed system religion where the only sin is disbelief and the only redemption is endless grievance. What this essay actually offers is membership in a status game controlled by academic ideologues. The currency isn't beauty or competence. It is the ability to detect invisible oppression in the mundane. It trains women to speak in a specialized vocabulary, geronto-patriarchal temporal extraction, olfactory subordination that functions as a shibboleth. Master the jargon and you gain entry into a social class that rewards perpetual dissatisfaction. The author isn't trying to make women happier, more productive, or more loved. She is trying to recruit them into a grievance economy where their temporal and emotional energy is siphoned off to fund the academic-industrial complex. It is a modern indulgence system. You pay your penance in anxiety, and the high priests grant you absolution. She cautions that women who fail to comply will face labels like unkempt, angry, or difficult, treating these as forms of penal language. Yet words reflect truth. Cease bathing, neglect your appearance, and hold a stance of enduring fury toward the world, and others will react differently. Bonds will weaken, chances will shrink. She presents these standard social results as oppression because she requires the external world to serve as the antagonist. She markets martyrdom on credit from the safety of a tenured university position, and she will not be there to pay your rent when the bill for her advice comes due. This temporal reclamation project is devoid of an actual good. It redirects time away from beauty, away from self-care, away from the quiet rituals that ground people in the morning. Toward what? Toward collective rage awareness. It does not promise happiness, love, family, or peace. It promises only the dissatisfied consciousness of the perpetually aggrieved. This is not a vision of the good life. It is a clinical description of a neurosis. The article's advice to women is functionally identical to the advice of every destructive cult in history. Sever ties with normal society, reframe all social consequences as proof of your unique virtue, and redirect your energy toward destroying the existing order. Then arrives the ultimate fatal contradiction. The essay ends with a stirring decree. Your timeline is yours. This is the most truthful line in the entire work, negating all that came before. If your time is truly your own, you may spend it on lipstick. You may spend it on perfume. You may spend it making yourself beautiful for a man you love, or simply for the aesthetic joy of inhabiting a body you find pleasing. The economic blindness of the essay is equally staggering. It frames the beauty industry as an engine of patriarchal extraction. But who buys the products? Women. Who runs the companies? Women. From Estee Lauder to Mary Kay to Fenty Beauty, the cosmetic industry is one of the only sectors in human history where women have consistently held massive entrepreneurial power. to recast an industry built and sustained by female consumers and female executives as a patriarchal conspiracy is to strip women of their economic agency entirely. It is to say that when women spend their own money on their own desires, they are merely puppets. That isn't liberation. It is an intellectual land grab performed against women's own understanding of their lives. Ultimately, the phrase "reclaim the decay" is an incantation of pure nihilism. Every great civilization has understood the maintenance of the body, the cultivation of beauty, and the honoring of physical form as acts of reverence for the gift of life. Medicine fights decay. Art fights decay. Family, children, and building all fight decay. To reclaim the decay is to make a virtue of surrender. It is to embrace the crumbling of the temple and call it progress. It is the spiritual inversion of everything that sustains human life, handed to you by a self-described satanic church witch who is literally performing an anti-logos ritual disguised as self-care. Your morning routine is not a war crime, but this essay is an act of intellectual and spiritual sabotage. Drop the weapon indeed, drop hers. I want you to consider what you just witnessed: a woman with a PhD, a tenure-track salary, and a self-described membership in the Satanic Church just spent 4,000 words convincing you that leg shaving is a war crime. She typed that sentence on a laptop built by male engineers, powered by a grid maintained by male linemen, in a building kept upright by male architects, in a civilization defended by male soldiers. And she wants you to believe that she is the oppressed one, because she spent 7 minutes with a Venus razor. The illiteracy of her position would be funny if it weren't so revealing. She is not describing reality. She is conducting a ritual, the satanic inversion of beauty into bondage, care into compliance, and peace into sedation isn't a metaphor. She told you exactly what she was doing. You just weren't supposed to notice. Meanwhile, in the world that actually exists, 1,600 men killed themselves in Britain last year. 70% of homeless people are men. Family courts strip fathers of their children on the strength of an unverified accusation. Boys are drugged into compliance in schools that punish their nature as defect. 80,000 children grow up without a father in this country alone, and the state that replaced him takes their mother's word as law and his paycheck as tribute. Real extraction is not a woman buying moisturizer. Real extraction is a man working himself into an early grave to fund a system that calls him oppressor while cashing his check. The good doctor does not write about these things because these things do not advance her theology. Her God demands a different sacrifice. You came into this essay perhaps wondering whether there was something to the claim that beauty routines are patriarchal violence. You leave knowing the anatomy of the lie. You can now define the terms, spot the unfalsifiable claims, catch the Kafka trap when it springs, and recognize the gamma bias that renders male suffering invisible while magnifying female discomfort into civilizational crisis. You have been given tools, not slogans. A man equipped with definitions is immune to word sorcery. A man who asks, "What would disprove this?" has just broken the spell. A man who applies the same standard to both sexes has just exposed the entire grievance industry as a protection racket wearing a sociology degree. Go forth and speak what you know. The next time someone tells you that mascara is colonialism, that perfume is thanatophobia, or that meditation is sedation, you will not argue on their terms. You will define the word, demand the evidence, name the hidden premise, and watch the argument collapse under the weight of its own incoherence. Then you will turn to the actual work of building your household, your family, your craft, your character, your civilization. The ideologues will continue renaming vice as virtue and calling the renaming liberation. Let them. You have better things to build and a timeline of your own to spend on things that matter. And now the sponsored book introduction. Redpilled Guide to Jesus, His Impact and Influence on History and Life. Men today are caught in a trap. You're told to man up while being shamed for the very traits that define manhood. I spent decades watching this hypocrisy destroy friends, family, and society itself. As a boy raised by a single mother in the 1970s, I saw firsthand how fatherlessness breeds chaos. As an adult, I watch universities turn sons into apologetic shadows of men, corporations punish stoicism while rewarding emotional theatrics, and churches swap spiritual rigor for Hallmark card sermons. This book isn't theory, it's a battlefield manual forged in the trenches of modern collapse. Jesus of Nazareth wasn't a sandal-wearing pacifist begging for hugs. He was a strategic leader who flipped tables, confronted corrupt power structures, and built an immortal brotherhood. His methods, tested across 2,000 years, offer men today a blueprint to reclaim purpose in a world that despises their biology. You'll learn why toxic masculinity is a linguistic trap set by those who benefit from your compliance, how Judas' betrayal mirrors corporate backstabbers and false allies, and why the resurrection isn't just a metaphor. It's your genetic mandate to build legacies that outlive you. This book is for men who are tired of being gaslit by therapists, HR departments, and clergy who've never swung a hammer or led a team. If you've ever been called too intense for valuing truth over politeness, or too traditional for wanting a family that doesn't end in divorce court, these pages are your antidote. Non-target readers, those who think male tears mugs are witty or that fathers are optional, should exit now. Buy a scented candle instead. The data doesn't lie. Male suicide rates skyrocket as purpose evaporates. Churches hemorrhage men bored by sermons on self-care, while secular gurus peddle hollow empowerment. Here's the fix: raw Stoic philosophy, evolutionary psychology, and the unvarnished teachings of history's most influential leader. You'll dissect Christ's confrontations with weak men, rebuild loyalty systems that Judas-proof your inner circle, and master the art of sacrificial leadership that built cathedrals, not safe spaces. Your ancestors carved civilizations from wilderness. You're handed participation trophies and antidepressants. This ends today. Turn the page or walk away, but know this: civilizations aren't destroyed by the weak, but by the strong who quit fighting. Choose your legacy. Redpilled Guide to Jesus, His Impact and Influence on History and Life, written by Conrad Riker. Buy now. Links in description.